So how did Ronald Fairbairn add to this? Well, what Ronald Fairbairn did was he came up with six basically pairs or three pairs of six positions that he felt one was the ego and one was the object, and how the ego, your own ego with your object, how they both related to each other. You could crisscross and make as like six pairs out of six combinations out of these three. And basically that would mean that's how you relate to object, in this case your mother, or later on a adult romantic partner, as the object here in his particular. I'll show you how. So his contribution is very important to psychotherapy, psychoanalysis, because he basically I'll explain how he explains this for therapy. So his first pair was the whole ego relating to the good object. So this is the healthy inner child, the child who's able to self-soothe, the child who's got a good object relation, and is very patient with themselves, very patient with other people. And the parent, in this case the good object, is also very patient, very nurturing, very responsive. And this is the part of the inner world that the object relation therapists try to expand and grow. And I'll explain to you how. Just remember that this is what therapists want you to achieve if they are object relation therapists. The anti-libidinal ego relating to the bad object. So what Fairbairn said was that if you have a depressed, angry, hopeless inner child who's not being able to self-soothe, doesn't have good object relations, bad object relations, a lot of splitting is happening, then you will also see that they have this sort of, they relate to the bad object, or in their case, every object is a bad object. In their case, they are seeing it as a rejecting parent. They're seeing the object as a rejecting parent or a neglectful parent. And in Fairbairn's opinion, whenever somebody speaks like that in a tantrum-like way, or they're trying to get their attention, it's actually the anti-libidinal ego speaking to the bad object. And then again, when someone is overly critical and harshly judgmental, they are speaking from the bad object of their personality to the anti-libidinal ego, which is the hopeless inner child. And finally, it was the libidinal ego relating to the exciting object. I think this was Fairbairn's most significant contribution, because he felt that there was, in this particular case, there was always this hopeful inner child who's always hoping for a good object to show up. And, there is this object that is always exciting, always over-promising, but doesn't really live up to the promises. Like maybe a mother who says, oh, yes, we'll do it, but never really does. She's not really responsive. So this is the over-promising parent. And in Fairbairn's opinion, when a person goes back to their cheating or abusive spouse, they are operating from this position. They are the libidinal ego relating to the overexcited object all the time, wanting that affirmation, wanting that promise of a good world and a good relationship from the exciting object. And Fairbairn also felt that this is what addiction is. He felt that this is basically the libidinal ego in a person is basically attached to that exciting object. Now, this is the first time that a psychotherapist or a psychoanalyst has actually used a non-living thing or a materialistic thing to describe an object, which is addiction to a substance. So, he talked a lot about how addiction to drugs or addiction to alcohol is actually your inner child, your hopeful inner child, trying to relate to this object, which is always offering you excitement. This is what Fairbairn felt. Now, according to psychoanalytic therapists, these positions are acted out in therapy and in between therapist and client interactions as well. For example, if you go back, if you have a good client and therapist relationship going, and you are able to show that to your client that you are a good object who's always nurturing, always patient, you feel good giving therapy to a particular client, and the client also responds to you very positively, then this is the whole ego which is relating to the good object. This should be the penultimatum goal for every therapist to reach, that they are able to bring out this whole ego in their client and that they can be the good object in therapy. Now, what happens is sometimes clients get very angry with therapists because therapists don't respond on time to emails, calls, things like that. Then you're seeing this acting out, the anti-libidinal ego relating to the bad object. It's not just from the client side, it's also from the therapist side. So if the therapist feels that they are for some reason feeling very negative towards a particular client, or they feel very judgmental towards a particular client, something about this client really bothers them and they're not able to do honest therapy with this client, then most likely it's your own bad object which is coming out towards your anti-libidinal ego, which is being played out by your client. And finally, it's this particular position where for example, Fairbairn would have said that let's say you have a therapist who's not really being nice to you, but doesn't really take your calls and doesn't really respond to you well, is not a very good therapist, but you continue to stick to it because you're hopeful that it's going to work out. You're hopeful that it's gonna pan out and therapy is going to work. Then most likely you would be operating from this libidinal ego relating to the exciting object. So object relation therapists use these positions very often in therapy to understand how they feel. We will be talking about this in I think, the next seminar, which is going to be on transference. That is what transference is. It's basically, your own object relations and your client's object relations, because you also are a human being. You also have object relations with your own mother, and how these 6 positions between you and the client can act out. So that is what basically transference talks about, and it is about your own projections onto your client and vice versa.